Hello students, the continuation concept of your unit 3 is n element uniform linear array. So to get a highly directive single beam pattern which is used for point to point communication, we are just increasing the number of point sources from 2 to n. If all the elements are spaced equally along a particular line, then the array is said to be linear. That's a known definition. Now if the elements are fed with equal magnitude and uniform progressive phase shift, then it is said to be uniform array. Now we are considering number of point sources starting as 0, 1, 2, etc. up to n minus 1, and they are separated by a distance of d meters, successive point sources, and this is d cos phi, which we have seen for two array point source itself, how to define this analysis. Now the total field at point P is a vector sum of the various individual sources. Let us define Et to be the total field and psi to be beta d cos phi plus alpha radians, such that it is the total phase difference of the various fields at distant point P with respect to the adjacent sources. In alpha, the phase difference in the adjacent point sources, and beta d cos phi as a phase difference due to the path difference, which we have seen from optics in the previous derivation of 2 point sources. So Et can be defined by E naught of e power 0 j phi, e power 1 j phi, 2 j phi. E naught remains same, magnitude remains the same. So Et is equal to E naught into 1 plus e power 0 is 1. So e power j phi plus 2 j phi etc. n minus 1 phi psi. Now multiply both sides by e power j psi for simplification. So Et into e power j psi equal to, we are multiplying by e power j psi such that the equation is modified to the form of e power n j psi. Now subtract the equation 2 with respect to 1 or 1 minus 2. So Et minus of Et j psi is equal to this equation minus this equation. Now it can be rewritten as Et into 1 minus e power j psi equal to E naught I have taken out. So it is 1 minus of e power j n psi alone exists. This is n psi. Now Et by E naught is equal to 1 minus e power j n psi divided by 1 minus e power j psi. I can rewrite this e power j n psi as e power j n psi by 2 into e power j n psi by 2. Similarly, e power j psi as e power j psi by 2 into e power j psi by 2. Now Et divided by E naught becomes equal to, again 1 is rewritten as e power j n psi by 2 into e power minus j n psi by 2, minus of e power j n psi by 2. The same equation we have written with replacement of 1 using this equation in both the analysis, numerator and denominator. Rewrite the equation by taking negative sign. So negative sign I have taken out. This term is brought here, e power j n psi of e power j n psi by 2 minus of this term. Similarly here also, as I have taken minus, this term goes to the front, e power j psi by 2 into e power j psi by 2 minus of e power j psi by 2 e power minus j psi by 2 into 1 is understood from the for the mathematical analysis purpose. 1 is rewritten as 1 by 2j divided by 1 by 2j. Why we are using this term is to bring it to the form of sine. In the previous analysis we have used the cosine representation. Here we are using the analysis of sinusoidal representation. So Et by E naught is equal to e power j n psi by 2 is taken out. So e power j n psi by 2 minus e power minus n j psi by 2. Similarly with respect to j psi by 2 and minus j psi by 2. Now e power j n psi by 2 remains as such. I am taking this here. So e power minus j n psi by 2 into whole term I am dividing by each term by 2j. So it is modified as sin n psi by 2 divided by sin psi by 2 e power j of n minus 1 psi by 2. Therefore Et becomes equal to E naught into e power j n minus 1 psi by 2 sin of n psi by 2 divided by sin psi by 2. So this is the equation for total far field pattern for anisotropic point sources when the reference for this phase is source 1. If we are shifting the reference with respect to center of the array, then I can neglect this n minus 1 psi by 2. So the equation becomes E naught into sin n psi by 2 divided by sin psi by 2. But how to write this mathematically? Just like that we cannot say this analysis. So I am cancelling out this equation, or what is the possibility? Replace n minus 1 psi by 2 by phi. So the equation is E naught of e power j phi sin n psi by 2 divided by sin psi by 2. or it is E naught into sin n psi by 2 by sin psi by 2 have a sign, replace e power j phi by cos phi plus j sin phi, or it is r angle phi representation. So if it is E naught of this value, if the magnitude is 1, it is angle of phi. So neglecting the angle representation, it is represented by E naught into sin n psi by 2 divided by sin psi by 2, where E naught is an individual source pattern analysis, and the term sin n psi by 2 divided by sin psi by 2 is called as the array factor or the array pattern. So this gets analysis of n isotropic point sources. Thank you.